This podcast is brought to you by Hoare Chartered Accountants. Hoare Chartered Accountants are based in Galway City and are a leading provider of audit, accountancy and taxation services. For more information, visit hoarecharteredaccountants.ie. You're welcome along to the Maroon and White pod. So I'm delighted to be joined by Galway Bay FM's Darren Kelly to look ahead to the Hurling Championship action this weekend. Preliminary quarterfinals in senior and intermediate, senior B quarterfinals and relegation semi-finals then in the senior championship. Darren, first off, after 3 rounds of group knockout, hurling has finally arrived.
Yeah, Paul, it's look, there's always excitement when you get to the knockout stages of the championship, isn't there? I like the format. I like, especially in the club level, I like the 3 out of 4 because a lot of these clubs don't have their county players until a couple of weeks beforehand. I know sometimes some people will think there's an awful lot of games with little jeopardy, and we certainly saw that in the football, the way the parents panned out in round 3. But I think we saw 2 weeks ago that we got a first taste of knockout matches with games at stake. But now there's no more second chances. Those that have survived the group stages, and we've had 1 or 2 big scalps, as we'll talk about, no doubt. Now it's down to knockout hurling. Exactly what we want as the nights are getting darker, but the action on the field of play, no doubt, will be getting brighter.
When you're in the mix of it, covering all these games and everything, I know for myself, trying to keep track on every games when they're all on throughout the weekend. It has been a hectic time over the last few weeks, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, like I love club championship, and it is a mile a minute. Like I covered 22 games alone in August. You know what I mean? And that's along with doing our work during the week and all that as well. But as I always say to people, like, we're lucky the job we have, Paul, you and me, because, and many other guests here, because that's what we get to do. We'd be going to games anyway. We'd be out and about, and when you're not at a game, you're trying to watch a game and balance all that in with life anyway. But like it happened so fast. Like, we're talking here now, 6 weeks after the championship started. We've already lost last year's county finalists. We've games this week now that are very hard to call. Some we think we know. There'll probably be a red herring somewhere that'll throw it out the park. But look, it comes down to club at the end of the day. We get behind Galway over the course of the year. We'll cheer them on in hurling football. Obviously, the Camogie this year did very, very well. The ladies footballers too were very close. But it comes down to club. And like, I'm from a junior club, I'd still be keeping an eye on how they're getting on if I'm battling slow. And I know it's been tough for your own Anna Down this year on the hurling side of things in particular. But at the end of the day, we follow these players all year wearing the maroon and white, and we just love the matches that they throw up. And we've seen some great contests so far. We've seen some marginal victories as well. But look, at the end of the day, we're down to the final 12, and one of these senior teams are going to win the Tom Callan Cup, and one of these intermediate teams are going to win McSilver.
Yeah, just as well, I forgot to mention it for people listening. David Connors has set up the Galway Hurling Scores WhatsApp group, and if anyone who's not in it and it's in the football side of things, I'd really recommend joining it, because it's been fantastic to be able to keep up with games, especially throughout games, because it can be hard to get updates with everything on. So that's just one for listeners listening. If they're not part of it, I'd highly recommend to join that. If we look at the Senior Hurling Championship, first, Darren, and the preliminary quarter-final, probably one of the hardest ones to call. Athenry, Tommy Larkins, Sunday, Duggan Park at 1 o'clock. Athenry have showed that they're able to play at this level and that they're comfortable enough at this level too. And Tommy Larkins digging it out against Turloughmore have showed why they're a consistent team at this level. And this one really feels like it's going to go down to the wire at the weekend.
It's the game I wanted, Paul, and I'm delighted to say I'll be in the commentary box for it on Sunday, and I'm really, really looking forward to it as well. In hurling over the last couple of years, there has been a lot of talk about the preliminary quarterfinals, because we've had a lot of big victories of various teams, especially the second teams against the third teams. But going back to what I said at the start, these third teams deserve this opportunity at the very, very least. And in Tommy Larkin's case, you can definitely say it, because they were in that tight group. There was very little between themselves, Capitagle, Sarsfields, and Turloughmore. And last year, Tommy Larkins were the talk of the championship at this stage. They bypassed straight to the quarterfinals, but they had beaten St. Thomas's, a St. Thomas's team that were going for seven in a row back then. So we know what the potential they have. With Athenry, though, I think they do get fed up many times with Athenry that I really predict them in the paper. But and even yourself at the start too, we wondered how going from senior B to senior A. I know it's officially called senior. How they'd settle into it. But they did. They put up a big result against Moycullen the first day. I got their test against Gort. Gort nearly took them out in round two, but their ability, showed that Athenry are on the way back. People of my generation in particular would have grown up with Athenry winning all Ireland titles, showed they are back. And like Jason Rabbitt's performance the last day, what I mean? Sure, what can you say? We're not just looking at these championships in regard to how teams progress. We're looking at potential future Galway seniors, and Jason Rabbitt is certainly in the mix there. Like with a 114, he
Yeah.
got the last day. St. Thomas is on the thing, and he's the key man in the Athenry attack. If he can deliver, if he's allowed to deliver as well, because no doubt Tommy Larkins have plenty of options to try and curtail him. Athenry are going to be thereabouts. Athenry build up this confidence under Niall Sunderland. He was with the juniors there first, moving into the senior setup. They're in a winning habit. Their defeat to St. Thomas's was their first defeat in 2 years. He's the man there, but of course across the field there as well. So you look at Killian Lawless as well, another strong attacker. They have a good midfield in Conor Lawless and Patrick Cannon, and of course their half back line with Kieran Hardiman, Owen Lawless, and Mark Hardiman as well. It's not Athenry not just about one player. Paddy Rabbit's as good a goalkeeper as any out there as well. They've strength right down the fields. They're finding their feet, and they're deservedly in this position. But with Tommy Larkins, Athenry will go in as favourite simply because they won two games in their group, while Tommy Larkins won one. But as we said there, like Aidan Murphy's probably been the goalkeeper of the tournament so far, which he's been consistent every single game, not just in pulling off saves, but creating attacks. They've like a very settled team under Niall Kelly, like Carl Dewey, Owen Nevin having a good season as well in defence. Jason Flynn, obviously, we go look at in the attack as well. Ronan Murphy in midfield. Kevin McHugo is taking responsibility with some of the frees, and there's many other names I'm leaving out there as well. You are right. This is a very, very difficult game to call as well. And this is like the real 50-50 battle that I would not be one bit surprised if we had to go to extra time to separate these teams out. As I mentioned with Athenry, it comes down to really the influence that Jason Rabbitt gets to put in this game. If it's sufficient enough, you would fancy them to get over the line. But Tommy Larkins do have a lot of options. They'll have picked up a big boost in beating Oranmore Mary. And a lot of people, I was in at the Sarsfields Capitagle game that day. A lot of people thought Ormore Mary didn't field their under 20s because of the final against Loughrea coming up. The only player missing was Thomas Blake. So it was a full strength Ormore Mary team, and Tommy Larkin stepped up. They came back in the game against Sarsfields. They came back in early, won, and arguably someone could say should have won against Capitagle the first day as well. So, these are two teams really going to battle. I don't know if you want a prediction of me yet, but I mean, this is the most difficult game we're going to talk about today in regards to Colin.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. If you look at the Athenry side of things, you're wondering who's going to pick up Jason Rabbit. Maybe it's Colin Flynn who'll be tagged with him. And if you look in the Athenry side of things, it's going to really be who tags Jason Flynn this weekend.
Yeah, and of course, with the great thing for forwards is they have mobility. They can play anywhere. And with the defence, the man markers will go in. We've seen plenty of examples of that over the various championships. But of course, you don't want to let your defensive structure get knocked out as well. So, like Colin Flynn is an option as well. We mentioned Owen Nevin as well. I doubt it'll be called Dewey unless Jason Rabbit plays on the square. But Tommy Larkins do have options to deal with that. I don't think he'll shake their defence too much. But at the end, you still have to win that matchup. With Jason Flynn, we've seen him playing in the inside line this season. We've seen him playing in midfield. We've seen him playing in the half forward line. Whoever for Athenry is going to pick up Jason Flynn is going to have to tag him again. That's strong. Look, they have a strong defence in general, Athenry anyway. You have Shane, the two quirks, Conor Burke behind the three I mentioned earlier on there as well. But whether either manager puts down a particular man marker or they say, right, closest person, stay tight to that player, that is going to be key because like Jason Flynn has scored 211 in the championship this year, and a good chunk of that has been from play. We mentioned Jason Rabbitt's performance the last day there as well, getting the scores. I think he's 124 in the championship so far. So you want to be knocking down those averages a good bit. You want to be keeping those players like that down to as close to half a dozen points as you can. But you are right. A lot is going to be determined by who can curtail those key players particularly.
Obviously, we've seen with Athenry that they've stepped up to this level, but there's a bit of expectation this weekend now going in that they sort of have to back up this Thomas's performance. But I'm sort of thinking Larkins have been a consistent team at this level for the last 7 or 8 years and knockout stages of the championship. Are Larkins not at an advantage, but do you think it is a factor that Larkins have been thereabouts over the last few years compared to this Athenry team?
I think what nullifies regard to is the more pressure is the fact that Athenry are coming in as the second place team and Tommy Larkins are coming in as the third place team. Because with Athenry, like for them this year, it should be really just down to the pressure they put on themselves. They are an ambitious group, they are quality hurlers, and they want to achieve things and they want to get closer to the business end of the championship. And they're well capable of winning this game. But their first priority at the start of the year, whether they would have said it publicly or not, was ensuring their senior status, and they have achieved that. Now, they come into this game, there were a lot of expectation, as you mentioned, especially after their performance against St. Thomas's, but they have to back it up because we are now at the knockout stages of the championship. And as we know from watching many championships over the years, Paul, it's a completely different ball game. I don't think, with the exception of St. Thomas's when they were dominating, I don't think any the top team in the group stages has necessarily gone on to win the competition. But if Athenry go out and hurl, go out and do what they've been doing for the last couple of years, and let's not forget this is an Athenry team that nearly went down to intermediate 2 years ago. But they've gotten into a winning habit. They are in this position here now. And the instruction, no doubt, that Niall Sunderland will give this team is to go out and hurl. Go out and play. Go out and do your thing. They'll have their particular plans for matchups. Like they don't want Jason Flynn to be dominating the game. They don't want Ronan Murphy to be having a run around the middle of the park as well. Athenry have only scored a couple of goals in the championship so far. Now Tommy Larkins have only scored three as well, but they've kept two clean sheets. A goal might be crucial for Athenry in this game. Jason Rabbit, the favourite for that, but Ronan Hardiman well capable of getting in scores as well. On the other side with Tommy Larkins, as I mentioned earlier on, this time last year, everyone's talking about Ormore Mary this year. Last year, everyone was talking about Tommy Larkins. Tommy Larkins, look, the 4 week gap, and that's another conversation regards is it too long or not for group winners. They got caught by Clarinbridge in the quarter final at the end of the day. It was a good innings for last year, but you're right. They are a team that's been knocking on the door there. They've taken some big scabs over the years. You nearly always put them down as a quarter final team there, thereabouts. They were in relegation 1 year as well. Um, the pressure on themselves is that they'll feel they have to be make a quarter final at least. I've no doubt their ambitions are at the start of the year or to try and break into a semi final as well. They have bounced back after a slow start to the championship. They are now in the championship mix, and really, we're going to find out now on Sunday at 1 o'clock in Ballinasloe exactly where Tommy Larkin stands in this year's championship.
Yeah, for me, when it comes to this one, I'm giving Larkins the nod by one here, just for that fact they've been thereabouts. But I think Athenry will put up a huge fight. But I just think Larkins' experience here in the Senior Hurling Championship will be enough, and I think they'll win by a point. How do you see this one?
Yeah, I'm the same. Like as I say, it would split down the middle on this one. And I've joked already about that. Right, I never seem to tip to him when I'm doing predictions, but I do think if there's a team that needs to win more, it's probably Tommy Larkins. And I 1 or 2 points, I would say. I'm going to go with you and go with the one. But this is one that I would not be one bit surprised if we go to extra time to sort this out. But I will be going with Larkins.
It's something as well we've been doing on the pod. Is a player to watch when it comes to this game. For me, it's probably Keane Daniels in this one. He's had a really impressive campaign for Tommy Larkins. Who would be your player to watch in this one, Darren?
It's a tough one because I've been listening to
Mm.
your football last week with Sean, and I kind of said to myself, "Don't go picking established Galway players as best you can." So that's the only reason I'm not saying Aidan Murphy, though he's probably the form player out of the 30 we expect to start. Look, Jason Rabbit, I really want to see can he can back up the performance against St Thomas's and go do it again. He's put in some great performances at underage with his club before. I want to see can he do back to back now in the senior championship. So I'll go with Jason Rabbit. Bratton Rai.
Looking then, Loughrea, Mike Cullen, Sunday, 3 o'clock. This is an interesting one. Like all the pressures on Loughrea, everyone expects them to come through this. For Mike Cullen, I think it's safe to say they mightn't say it openly, but there's nothing to lose for Mike Cullen in this one.
100% agree. If we start with Mike Cullen first, look, again, Mike Cullen are a club that, and they're doing great work there to keep the game alive west of the city, ensuring their senior status. Their county final was beating Gort 2 weeks ago. They got the job done, and like there's some talented players, especially likes of Ainan Noon, Keane Folan, James Bradley as well, Matt Donoghue in defence. Yeah, just to name another one, I can name a few more there as well. They had suffered a heavy defeat to Athenry the first day. They suffered two big defeats because obviously they got a real tanking against St Thomas's in round two, but they were able to pick themselves up and get the job done against Gort. That was their big game. Coming in against Loughrea, nobody's going to give them a chance. I know they've a couple of doubts there. Dermot Davern, for example, is a doubt for the game. Fikra McDonough also a doubt too. Loughrea, and this is the funny part with Loughrea, because obviously the shock of the championship so far has been Cropwell beating Loughrea in round three. I saw them against Kilconieron, and you don't mind the slow start, and like I don't want to be disrespecting Kilconieron when I say this, but for a 4 point victory for Loughrea, many would have considered a poor effort by the defending champions. They certainly got the job done against Kilconieron. Now, they missed an awful lot of scoring chances as well and still put up 425. So when they lost to Cropwell in round three, it did catch us all off guard. At the end of the day, you have to take everything into perspective here. There was little jeopardy. I know every manager that you talk to, any manager that I talk to, will always say, we want to go through the front door. We want to get straight into the quarterfinals. And I believe that no team ever goes out to lose. But at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world. Or Loughrea having to play the extra game. They didn't perform in the day. No doubt Tommy Kelly will take an awful lot out of that. He'll probably have learned more in that game against Cropwell than he did in the previous two games against Kilconieron and Kilconieron. Hopefully Neil Carey is back for them. Jamie Ryan, I think, is still going to be out. They'd be missing Shane O'Brien at the start there as well. But Loughrea have so many options in regards to their starting team. And even though they got bet the last day, like Anthony Burns, that was his first start. He scored 2 goals off the bench against Kilconieron. Like sitting down to pick a Loughrea team, even with the players that we know that mightn't be available, is a challenge. I expect a kick in Loughrea on Sunday in Pearse Stadium. I think they're going to step up. They've Cullen Killeen. He played well the last day against Cropwell. He was superb against Ormore Mary in the under-20 final. I think Loughrea are going to come out to lay down a marker, I feel. Mike Cullen will give everything they can. They only lost to Loughrea by 7 points in last year's championship, but I think they'll do well to stay within that. If Loughrea are good enough to win back-to-back county titles, they're going to give an example of what they are capable of producing, and I think they will win this game comfortably enough.
Yeah, I think this game should tell us really where Loughrea are because amazingly, after losing to Crowell, they probably went down considering how open the championship is this year.
Yeah, and I'd be very concerned for Loughrea if they only come through this game much colours without putting in a performance. I know at the end of the day it's about the result, and Mike Cullen are going to be up for this, as you said at the start. They've absolutely nothing to lose. But like at the start of the year, everyone's trying. This is probably the closest county title race we can recall in many a year. Like I went with Loughrea at the start of the championship, but narrowly so. I've been flipping between Thomas's, Clarinbridge, Turloughmore, even Sarsfields are coming back in the mix. We've mentioned Capitagle gone, but those six, there was very little between them. You always, with any match, you look at the reaction to a bad performance. That's the teams I look for to see where they stand. Everybody can have a bad game, and you want to have your bad game on a day where your championship fate is not on the line. Loughrea have had that. Now, Cropwell had a great game too. We shouldn't take away from that. That's why with Loughrea, like I think Loughrea will win the game even if they don't play to their best. Even if Mike Cullen do push them like they did last year. But you do want to see, like, when you look at the Loughrea team, like Shane Morgan there at centre back, Kieran Hannon and Johnny Cohen behind him, Joe Mooney playing in the half back line this year, which is very, very interesting. Ian Hannon and Colin Killeen, a very good midfield. We've talked about all the attacking options there already, and we haven't even mentioned Vince Morgan or Tiernan Killeen. Loughrea are a team that should be aspiring now to win 4 matches to win the championship. That's what they're looking at. They want to be back-to-back champions. They have never done that before. They need to put in a performance. The pressure will be on them because it's not on Mike Cullen, and that's what we'll be looking forward to see. And again, I don't want to be just discounting Mike Cullen or saying they have no chance. I'll probably say that about two other teams as well in this conversation. But a lot about Sunday is about what Loughrea can produce in regards to performance as well as a result.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, a credit to Mike Cullen considering like without Fiachra McDonough or Fiachra McDonough picked up an injury, but Fionn McDonough hasn't played yet in the campaign, and we
Mm.
all seen him like hurl for Mary I there at the start of the year in the Fitzgibbon Cup and didn't look out of place at all. And Jeremy Davern's had injuries, so they've really battled away considering some of those injuries. But I'm with you here. I still think Loughrea are going to respond here. I'm going for Loughrea in 9 by this one. I just think they'll be motivated now, particularly after the last day and how it went wrong. And of course, as well, Anthony Burns, he's suspended for this game as well, so he won't be playing against Mike Cullen. You mentioned there
Right.
you expect Loughrea to come through this one.
Yeah, picking the margin, like because again, you're conscious that and look, my kind of options there, like Paul Curran's got 2 points off the bench. The last day too could be in for a starting place too. Colin Cunningham against Shane Morgan. If that's the matchup that happens, that's going to be a very, very intriguing matchup. And without a shadow of a doubt, Mike Cullen have to win the midfield battle to have any chance in this game. It's hard to go. Hope that you said I'm going to go 8 because I'm nice. But and I'd be I'd be so happy if Mike Cullen push Loughrea all the way. But you know, I feel Loughrea have to show up and have to be ruthless. And they were against Daly, and we certainly know what's in them. So I'm going to go Loughrea by 8.
Yeah, when it comes to player to watch, for me, it's probably Kieran Hanrahan this weekend. I think if he keeps delivering the performances he has for Loughrea, and even last year he was impressive too. I think he's very close to a Galway call-up. Who's your player to watch here, Darren?
Yeah, Kieran Hurling, I gave him man of the match against Daly. I was really impressed with his performance in defence. I think the spine of Loughrea is going to be important because they've conceded 3 goals in both their last games, and whatever. I don't think they'll get away with conceding 3 goals against Mike Cullen. They certainly won't get away with conceding 3 goals in any other championship match if they're lucky enough to continue going forward. So, as I mentioned there with the matchup between Shane Morgan and Colin Cunningham, I think Shane Morgan, has to lead that defence. He's been arguably Loughrea's best player so far, but he has to marshal that defence around him. I'm not saying Loughrea need to keep a clean sheet at the weekend, but 3 goals in 2 consecutive games, that's not going to be a championship winning defence. So Shane Morgan to try and lead the defence and bring that figure down at least.
We look then at Turloughmore, Clonmerdale, Kenny Park, 2:15. For Turloughmore, it's obviously a big response since the Clarinbridge game. Then delivered a really impressive performance against Castlegar, and the the last game then against Arddrahan was obviously a funny one because they knew they were sort of going through, and then Clonmerdale, they're here by the skin of their teeth. They got that win in the final game against Kilconieron, so it is sort of hard going on current form to know where both of these teams are at the minute.
Yeah, neither team has reached its potential in the championship so far. I think everybody, even Turloughmore and Climate Daily listeners or follower or watchers, will agree with that. Turloughmore obviously winning the league title, they're always in the mix in regards to championship favourites, and conceding the 5-21 to Clarinbridge the first day would have, not this losing to Clarinbridge, but to concede the 5 goals. Look, they shuffled the team like the Dahi Burkett in the attack that day. He's gone back into defence. You mentioned about the performance against Ardran, and there was jeopardy there because what Castlegar did in their performance against Clarinbridge, it was 2 late goals. Clarinbridge won that game. If Castlegar had picked up a victory there and Turloughmore had slipped up against Ardran, Turloughmore would have been out. So they got much closer to the trapdoor than they would be comfortable with. In saying that, we know Turloughmore can play better, and they are in the knockout stages of the championship, which again, that's the first priority. Get to this position, whether it's first, second, or third. The loss to Clarinbridge, no shame with that. They bounced back with an emphatic performance against Castlegar the second day, scoring 5-29. Again, as we said earlier on, the reaction. Conor Walsh didn't play the last day against Ardran too. He didn't start anyway. Sean Loftus did the heavy scoring. Jamie Holland there as well. Tom Quirk in the middle of the field. What a captain he is for Turloughmore. He's been leading them the whole way through there as well. And Dye back at centre back as well. Darragh Walsh as a good goalkeeper as any around. Turloughmore, the Division 1 league champions. Clymerdale are the Division 2 league champions. Again, they got beaten by Crockwell the first day. Nothing really wrong with that based on what Crockwell have done since. But as I said there earlier on when we were talking about Loughrea, like they took a 20-point loss to Loughrea, and Loughrea missed an awful lot of chances in that game. Now, Clymerdale have carried an awful lot of injuries into the championship. Jack Fitzpatrick is the standout name that hasn't been there for them as well. And the biggest concern for them is Brian Burke is a doubt for Sunday's game from I believe. Matthew Tarpey is out for Turloughmore, but Brian Burke is a doubt for Clymerdale. they're playing a level below Turloughmore at the moment. Look, they to win that game against Kilconieron, it wouldn't have been their target at the start to survive. But that it ended up turning out to be that type of game because we know the young players that Kilconieron are bringing through as well. They're in this position. They have nothing to lose. They have Brian Concannon that can turn it on, like the Concannons down the middle of the field. Darren Daly in midfield as well. And there's history between these two teams. Now we're going back 40 years, but like many older person will talk about the 85 county final victory for Turloughmore against Daly, and the roles being reversed in 1986 when Daly won their only senior championship. Where Daly can win this game, well, first thing first, Brian Concannon has to get plenty of supply in the ball. Hopefully, Brian Burke is fit because him against Dahi Burke, if that happens, will be an epic duel in itself. Darren Daly does he have the backup? Owen Earls is out from my understand. Does he have the backup there to lead the midfield charge against Tom Quirk and maybe Dara Whelan? Again, you just Turloughmore have so many options if they can find that mix, and they're in this position without showing their full hand. Turloughmore, there's more in Turloughmore's hands. And look, they're five inter-county players. They're just a level above Daly at the moment, and I think that will show in the final results on Sunday.
For Turloughmore, I think they'll want to get closer to their full strength team. They've obviously had, as you mentioned, Conor Walsh didn't play the last day. Sean Linan hasn't featured there. We wish him best of luck with his recovery, and hopefully he can get back at some stage for Turloughmore because such a vital player for them over the last few years as well. But if they can start to get bodies back, because even we've seen Killian Trayers come back the last day and he's had a difficult year with hamstring issues and he's got back on the pitch. But for Darren Shaughnessy and Brian Holland, they'll want to get closer now to their full team, especially ahead of a potential quarter-final.
Yeah, look, and as you mentioned there, Sean and Han, at the end of the day, it puts everything in perspective, like, what I mean, and wishing him the best of luck, and hopefully all things work out. We get him back in the hurling field sooner rather than later. Like, this is a hobby, this is our love, but life is life at the end of the day. Yeah, look, if Turloughmore can get their full deck out there, they're a match for anyone. Like, at the end of the day, nobody was ruling Turloughmore out of the championship after their first day loss to Clarinbridge. They are like, everybody expects Turloughmore to make a semi-final, obviously, based on the fact that themselves, Loughrea and Sarsfields, we'll get to them in a minute, I know, throws up some intriguing quarter-final matchups if the results go with form. But, that's Turloughmore. After what happened at the start and losing the first game, they would have said, right, let's get back, get a win. They put an emphatic win against Castlegar. Killian Whelan has scored a couple of goals. Tom Quirk, like they've options. Jamie Holland, Sean Loftus, many options there as well. They've been able to deal with the one or two absentees that they've had. But, this is the last chance to try and get through, missing a name or two, because if Turloughmore get the results in this game, whoever they play in the quarterfinal is going to be a very, very tough contest.
Yeah, it's even interesting when you look at the potential for what teams could get through this weekend. For Turloughmore, for instance, they can only play Thomas's, Crowell or Ormore Mary in a quarter final, and even from Loughrea earlier, like there could be.
And they'll be praying it's not St. Thomas's.
Yeah, like I think
I think they
we're
said to the side of St. Thomas's.
yeah, like the potential of Loughrea and Thomas's in a quarter final is huge. Like, and we're already sort of looking at some of those potential pairings.
Yeah, like if Daily people watching us here will be kind of go, wait a minute here, like, and rightfully so. Because like with the one Division 2 of the league, I expected them to be fighting for top spot in their group with Loughrea. As it turned out, Cromwell have really delivered over the course of the campaign. And look, with Daily, if they hit form, they always keep honest. They are the team that have pulled in a big performance in most championships they've been in. Sure, up before last year, they were the last team to beat St. Thomas's in a knockout match. So nobody here is discounting Daily in this game. It's just we are looking at the mats, if it's fair to use that term, and looking at the form. Turloughmore has still been playing. It's just a level above Daly, and I think it's going to show because especially if there's concerns about Brian Burke. And of course, we mentioned Jack Fitzpatrick, and there's a few other names out at the moment. Uh, Turloughmore have more of their hand than Killimor Daly, and with 2 wins out of two, they have the confidence. Killimor Daly will have that lift after beating Kilconieron, and sometimes a 1 point victory can give everyone a massive boost. And I've no doubt they'll play much better than they played against Loughrea, but I just don't think it's going to be enough ball on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think for Clymer Daly, a lot of it probably comes down to Brian Kincannon, as you mentioned, and Brian Berkeby's fit. If you look at the Turloughmore forwards across the board, you've had Sean Loftus, Barry Callanan, Connor Walsh. We've even seen Tom Quirk operating at centre forward at different stages. Killian Whelan. There seems to be a greater spread in the Turloughmore attack compared to Clymer Daly's.
Yeah, look, 5 of their forwards have scored more than 13 points. Even despite the first they lost, they still scored 126 in that game against Clarinbridge. They only got beaten by 7 points, and the goals were the difference. They scored 8 goals in the championship, as you've named most of them out there. Like Matthew Tarpey is a big loss for them this weekend. But there's plenty more options. You've likes of Barry Callanan as well, is well capable of doing damage on these days. Sean O'Hanlon back to the team there as well, can lead the attack too as well. Like with Turloughmore, no different to the conversation we're having about Loughrea. You're looking at a team about who will get left out, as even with the 1 or 2 absentees in there as well. So, and for Killimor Daly's defence, that's the challenge for them, because Aaron McDonough is superb, Paul and David Concannon very good, Adam Brett on his day could do damage too. I think they changed the goalkeeper the last day, Nigel Daly, back between the sticks. Dermot Earls has to find those matchups to make sure that none of like one Turloughmore player might end up getting a bit of a run, but you can't have 2 or 3 of them to have an opportunity in this game, and they're well capable of doing that. But a lot of the Turloughmore players will be out in the wing as well. They'll use the width of the field, so that's the challenge for Killimor Daly, to put out those fires. If they can do that, and like they only conceded 1 goal against Kilconieron, but they conceded 7 in the previous 2 games. Then it's applying the 2 Bryans, and they need the 2 Bryans on the field to play. Paul Craven, Luke Linsky, will also are capable, and Darren Daly's capable of getting supply down to them. But they're like more of a lot of quality forwards there, and the question is, do Killimor Daly have enough personnel in defence to deal with that?
Yeah, I'm going here by Turloughmore by 7. I think Clymer Daly will put up a right battle to them, but I just expect Turloughmore to pull away here in the last quarter. And player to watch here is probably Sean Loftus. I think he's starting to become that go-to forward for Turloughmore. How would you see this, Darren?
Yeah. Look, I'll go Turlough by 8, because I do think the margins in these other games, bar the first one, are going to be closer to the 10 point mark. And I do hope that one of these teams that we're not predicting do step up and really give us a game. And I'd be the first to eat humble pie if they do. So Turlough by 8 is the official prediction. Player to watch, I'm torn between 2 players here. I'm going. Can I name 2?
You can do, yep.
Well, you mentioned Killian Trayers, back in the setup there,
Yeah.
which got a great performance the last day scoring point. But Tom Quirk, I've just been impressed with his leadership with Turloughmore this year. I think he's the right person to lead this group of Turloughmore players. I there's some great leaders in the Turloughmore setup, but I just think they have the right person at the moment as a captain if they are finally going to end that long wait for a senior hurling championship. So Killian Trayers and Tom Quirk, I'll name 2 Turloughmore for this one, because I think they're 2 key players if they're going to get the best out of this team going forward.
The final then, preliminary quarter-final, Kenny Park, 4 o'clock, Sarsfields, Castlegar, live on TG4 on this Sunday for supporters who can't make the trip to Kenny Park. First off, Darren, great to have it on TG4 for Galway supporters who can't make it, and obviously just from a national perspective to see the Galway Hurling Club game highlighted.
Oh, 100% agree with you. Like, I love it when there's Galway games and TG Car. Of course, it'd be remiss of me with the job I have, not to mention it's also live in Galway BFM, you know. But no, look, it's always great to have the games in TV. I don't think we've had the hurling ones in Sarsfields and Ardran, was that last year? Or but look, also too with Galway GATV and the wonderful service.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, as you said at the start, Paul, we can only get to X amount of games over the weekend, but we get the option to watch at least usually four more games over the course of the week. So like we're blessed at the moment. Like if there's one thing that came out of the COVID pandemic was that with this technology we probably never made use of, and now we're getting games streamed, we're getting games live on television, and thankfully we're all healthy enough and lucky enough to be able to go to the games. Sarsfields against Castlegar. It's a tough one in one way. Look, Sarsfields are the strong favourites for the game, and deservedly so. They bounced back in the opening day loss to Warrenmore Mary. They only lost that game by a point as well, it has to be said. They have weathered injuries. Like, well, I'm not going to lie to you. When we got the team against Capitagle, we thought that Francis Madden was pulling the bluff for us here because everything was kept quiet about Darren Morrissey, Alex Kinnear, Paddy McCrory. And which got it ended up the Capitagle made two late changes to their starting team, and Sarsfields actually went with the team. And then we realised, the lads had picked up injuries on the way in during the week. Paddy wasn't available due to the he's with the cadets, and I think all three are out again on this Sunday. But they came back, they put in a performance against Tommy Larkins, and then the last day against Capitagle, they stepped up. It took them probably 5-10 minutes to work out Capitagle. When they did, dropping John Cooney back, Darren Donoghue, who's having a fantastic season as well, and they took ownership of that game. They were 3 points to nil down earlier on. They went well in front. I think they were 8 up before Capitagle got a run in the closing stages. And for someone like myself that was probably not rating Sarsfields as high at the start of the season, they are certainly back in the mix. And of course, you should learn from experience with a Hurling or Camogie never to write off a team from New Inn and Bullon. They have a lot of young players in the squad this year. I think it's 8 under 20s came in some shape or form, and it's brought a bit of freshness in there. And no different to Turloughmore, they'll have a lift now, especially after beating Capitagle. Again, that was such a tough group. Whichever team didn't make it out of that group is always going to be a highly fancy team. For Castlegar, like this is a Castlegar team that nearly beat Loughrea in last year's quarter-final.
Yeah.
And they beat Ardran the first day. They have some great hurlers there, and I saw them at the under-20 final, day one final against Clarinbridge. Like, the future was bright with Castlegar, but we're still going to be talking about Ger Farrer primarily in this conversation because they're going to lean an awful lot on him. They'll hope the likes of Greg Thomas, Killian O'Callaghan, Donald Barry, Dean Higgins in defence, Garroch King, that's a player now that is starting to have a big influence there as well. But they beat Ardran the first day and then get walloped by 27 points at Turloughmore. Like, at the end of the day, whether Castlegar beat Turloughmore or not, you can't justify that performance. Like, what I mean? Castlegar should be doing much better than that. They, made some amends the last day. They nearly took Clarinbridge. They pushed them all the way to a couple of late goals. And that's what Matt Murphy, and look, no more experienced person over a team in this senior championship than Matt Murphy to try and get the best out of Castlegar. And we have seen on multiple occasions when Castlegar are written off, they come out with a performance. I think they've beaten Sarsfields in the championship in recent history. I know Sarsfields won the game last year, but I think they did beat Sarsfields a couple of years ago, if I'm right. I just don't have it in front of me here at the moment. Joseph Cooney back as well is a big plus for Sarsfields. And even there, when he got the point against Capitagle and the fist up in the air, he knew how important it was. And that's the leader, the man that captained Sarsfields to the county title 10 years ago. Kevin Cooney, established name of the team now. The Cooneys have their, print over this team, but many other players. Darren Murphy worked very, very hard the last day for Sarsfields as well. It's an interesting game. Like I say, Sarsfields will go in a strong favourite, and rightfully so. And they are a team that many would have in the championship conversation. But, Castlegar have shown that they can test these big teams. And if they can come out and test these big teams, it'll be interesting to see how they deal with Kevin Cooney in particular. Where does Joseph play? Does he play midfield? Does he play on the wings? Does he go further in? Can they curtail that? But then on the other side of it, because we've seen how smart Sarsfields were the way they played against Capitagle, John Cooney, revelation, Darren Donoghue flying it this year. John Cooney got all the headlines the last day, but Darren Donoghue, you could argue, has been their best player in the championship so far. Can they outfox the Sarsfields defence? Kevin Hines is there as well, like in the experience he brings to the Sarsfields defence. If they can, like I certainly hope we get Ger Farrer against Kevin Hines. That'll be worth getting in the car after Duggan Park and going to Kenny Park for. That'll be intriguing. But if they can get a way to get their attackers into the game, and like Jack Coyne got 4 points the last day too, he pushed up. But Castlegar will need more than just Greg Thomas and Ger Farrer doing the scoring. That's a big challenge for them. They have a lot to think about, but Matt Murphy certainly is the one person that could try and work out those puzzles.
The one I'm kind of interested here when it's a talking point coming into this game is Castlegar obviously have a big performance in them as we seen last year against Loughrea in that quarter final. But if Sarsfields are any way complacent coming in to this one at all, Castlegar could easily turn them over.
100% agree. I don't think Sarsfields will be complacent because they've been battle hardened after coming through that group. They, even on the last day, were playing for their championship lives because early in the game against Capitagle, they were 3 points down, and we were hearing that Tommy Larkins were off to a great start against Ormore Mary. So I certainly don't think he'll get that. I think Sarsfields as well, because they're missing the few names, that focuses the mind an awful lot too. So I think Sarsfields are going to come and bring the performance that they brought the last day. But Castlegar have to bring the performance that they have, but maybe the last day as well. I wasn't at the game against Clarinbridge, but certainly it was the reaction that they needed after the Turloughmore performance. And again, at the risk of repeating myself, sometimes that's what you need to look at, the reaction to a bad performance. And Castlegar had that. This one not going to be as tight in regards to Ryan and Tommy Larkins, but no, I wouldn't say the margin will be as high. But Castlegar, no, Castlegar won't fear Sarsfields. It's just can they work out how to break them down, and if they can, and if they can get those inside players supplied with plenty of ball, or even draw the frees that Ger Farrer will take advantage of, they'll be in this match in the closing straight. It just again, Sarsfields just have a few more options in that lift of Joseph Cooney back, assuming he starts, of course. And Jimmy McCrory, another player that worked very well the last day too. You still just think Sarsfields have just more in the tank.
By how much there, Darren?
You know what? I did say I'm going to go closer in this one, and I will go with by three.
That's right. I'll actually have the exact same ears. Yeah, I think it's three. Who's your player to watch here?
I've said him, mentioned him a few times, Darren Donahue. I just
Yeah.
thought he was brilliant the last day. And he gave man of the match, and we did the commentary on the game, but it was a toss up between himself and John Cooney. But Darren's been consistent over the campaign, and I think if he brings that form into the knockout stage, the Sarsfields are capable of threatening one of the other big guns if they get over Sunday's match.
Yeah, although I've went here for Sarsfields, I'm actually gone for Darren Eary, Castlegar. I think gives Castlegar a huge option, particularly with his pace in the half forward line. He's had an impressive campaign to date for them so far. So that's who I've gone with my player to watch in Sarsfields and Castlegar. If we look then at the senior relegation semi-finals, where none of these clubs wanted to be at the start of the year, but this is where they are now. Ardrahan Gort, 5 o'clock in Kilbacety on Saturday evening. This is an interesting one, very close in proximity between Ardrahan and Gort. Gort unfortunately ended up at this stage last year, and they're back here again. And then if you look at it from an Ardrahan perspective, it's just been interrupted by a lot of injuries, unfortunately, for Ardrahan in this campaign.
Yeah, they have missed a few names over the course of the campaign as well. And again, I know we spoke about Group 4 in particular being so tough, but Group 3 was nearly as tough as well. And like Ardrahan would have been a team that would have been targeting to be in the knockout stages of the championship. And look, they came out the wrong side of 3 games. One bad effort against Clarinbridge, but they gave everything they had against Turloughmore. They were the wrong side of a 1 point ball game against Castlegar, which based on the strength of the other two teams, was probably always going to be the key match for them. It's picking themselves up now after a run of 3 defeats. No different to Gort as well. Gort were very poor the opening day against St. Thomas's. They'd lost Greg Lally to the suspension as well. They put in a good shift against Athenry, but again, the Moycullen match last day would have been their game. I'm never a fan of making big predictions in relegation matches
Yeah.
because the dynamic goes the dynamic is completely different, and the form book completely goes out the window as well. But, and I know we'll talk about the other game in a second, I would fear for the team that loses this match in regards to holding their senior stars because they will go in as underdogs to the other game. Based on what we know, but it's a South Galway battle between Ardrahan and Gort, and no team will leave anything behind out on the field of play for that match.
Yeah, I just wonder, Ardrahan did have more confidence coming into this one. You consider it was going against them against Turloughmore first day out, but they battled back and they hit 3-12. While for Gort, they are coming into this one on the back of a disappointing second half performance against Moycullen.
Yeah, and the thing is, of the key match in each group, Cork lost theirs in round three. Ardrahan lost theirs in round one. Ardrahan after round one, and they've done it in the past, and they've great tradition with the club, but they knew that they were up against it for the other two matches. So, nobody ever really has a momentum in a relegation playoff, but Ardrahan certainly can come into this kind of going, but you know what now? We put up a decent show against Turloughmore. We didn't perform in the first two games, so and we know we can get one over our neighbours. With Gort, like Gort were very lucky to end up in the relegation playoffs last year, yet they were very lucky to survive them. With a late kind of scramble goal, I think it was Richie Cummins against Mulya. They could very well have been a senior B team this year, Gort. So they'll be disappointed that they're back down here. But that Boycullen game was the game that they would have targeted. And as you said there, it didn't happen for them in the second half. Mike Cullen got the job done. Can Cork pick themselves up? Because look, Cork were county champions twice, only just over a decade ago. Um, so like that's the challenge. It'd be the harder challenge of Brian Regan lifting the group this week. But again, it's a relegation match, and we've often seen the favourites to survive relegation go down. These two are just going to go at it. If you put the gun to me head, I probably have talked myself into picking Ardrahan to win the match. But I mean, anything can happen in these games, and I think that there'll be a lot of battered bodies at the end of this contest.
Yeah, I've gone for Ardrahan here by 1 point. I think Gort are going to throw everything at them, but I just
Yeah,
think Ardrahan might just have that bit more firepower in attack.
yeah. I just say from what we know and what we've seen at the teams, um, you would feel Ardrahan can do it. Look, at the end of the day, the fans there as well. Like what I mean, they have that bit of like inter-county experience. Yeah, just on known form. I'm just looking at their team sheet here in front of me. That's why I'm looking down for a second. On all known form, you'd pick Ardrahan, but I mean it's neighbours. This is going to be little in it. Ardrahan by two, just to go official.
Yeah, my player to watch when it comes to this one, I think it's Brian Callanan. He's really graduated impressively up to the senior ranks for Ardrahan, and he's been impressive in attack even when it's been a difficult campaign for him. And I'd expect him to have a big performance here now on Saturday. Who would you be looking out for here, Darren?
Yeah, it's just been a relegation game, and I know I said earlier on about county players, but you're looking at your leaders. You're looking what can Keane and Vahe be the difference between these teams.
Mm.
I know Derek is back in the setup as well, but I'll play safe with this one and go with Keane and Vahe.
Right. If we look then, last year's county finalists, Capitagle coming up against Kilconieron, 5 o'clock in Loughrea. Capitagle obviously didn't intend to be here at the start of the year, but they are here now, and they're not going to have it easy either against Kilkenny.
No, and it all comes down to mindset at the end of the day. Look, Capitagle are the most experienced team of the lot here, and the survivors who would have played intermediate back in 2014. Um, that's where it comes down to Capitagle now is that can they put it away because they would have come in with massive ambitions this year. They were very, very close to winning the county championship last year. Can they park what's happened this year? Like they threw away a result against Tommy Larkins. I know Larkins nearly won the game. If there was another 5 seconds, they would have won the game. Threw away a victory there. They didn't perform against Ormore Mary. It just was one of their poorest performances in recent years. Let's call it what it was. And while they went down fighting against Sarsfields, they conceded. They fell into Sarsfield's trap. They got themselves in two minds whether to run the ball or drop ball down. And sure, when they ran the ball, they ran the cul-de-sacs. When they dropped the ball down, John Cooney became the hero for Sarsfields. But Capitagle, yeah, a term I hate using, but are too good to go down because they would have come in as county championship contenders. But of course, at the end of the day, There's no hiding place in the Senior Hurling Championship. If you get relegated, you deserve to get relegated. And they've two chances now to make sure that that doesn't happen for themselves. Jam Mannion has been flying it this year. Niall Collins had a great second half the last day against Sarsfields. Liam Collins quiet on that occasion. He'd be hoping for a bigger performance. Michael Garvey, his influence will be very, very important. Luke Cockton, James Garvey, Declan Cronin is one of the best defenders in the county without a shadow of a doubt. They all need to step up now and just get this job done. That's on the Capitagle side of things. And regarding Kilconieron, look, Kilconieron, again, no different to the conversation we had about Michael is about staying up in the top flight. They have young players coming through. We've seen them compete them on an under-20 championship last year as well. They just want to keep themselves up. They'll relish this opportunity at having a go at Capitagle because in the championship they lost to Clarinbridge by a point. They came back fighting against Cropwell in the second game, got a couple of goals, probably disappointed with their performance here in that game, and they ran Loughrea all the way. They won't come in with any hang up about being in the relegation playoffs, even though they'll be disappointed to be in there. And then the pressure won't be on them. They like if Kilconieron beat Capitagle the weekend, it would not shock me one bit because there's a performance in Kilconieron, and I think they'll survive whether it's this game or the next game. I'm torn on the predictions of what we'll get to that at the moment, but there's good young players with Kilconieron for themselves if they can maintain their senior stars. They are a team that can move up the ladder in Galway over the next couple of years. But this is no different to the first game we talked about. Again, these relegation games, it's all going to just come down to performance on the day, and there's very rarely a big margin. I know Oran Murray hammered Gort last year in one, but if Kilconieron will give Capitagle everything they have, that's without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, I think Kilconieron will give them everything, but the only thing is, I think Cappy have probably come to terms with now they're out of the championship. And as you mentioned, I do agree with you. I think they're way too good to go down from what we've seen last year. But when it comes to these games, that doesn't really matter, as we've seen in relegation games throughout the last few
Well,
years. But
the thing is, Paul, just jumping in there, sorry, you'd be concerned for the future of Capitagle if they make hard work out of surviving.
yeah,
They're in this position there now. They were in a tough group. We were always going to be talking of a championship favourite or dark horse in this relegation thing based in the group. But now we need to see them step up because they just didn't. They went out of games, the three matches that they played. But they were the team that got survived the group stages last year and went on the run that nearly delivered the Holy Grail for them. They will have to, even if they survived and struggled through, you want Capitagle to lay down a marker. I'm not saying that they're going to win the game by any big margin, but you want to see them say, right, we're in this position. Let's get the job done. Let's get out of here. And they will go in as favourites, and rightfully so, for this match. I think, but Kilconieron won't have any fear of them. Kilconieron will go to play them, but we will want to see some much kind of roots there that Capitagle are going to write this and get themselves back on track next year because they will go into next year's championship fighting that they don't get relegated as a team to watch in regard to winning it. But if they make hard work of this, and if they find themselves in the relegation final against, just because we're predicting that the winners of this or the losers of this game will be favourites in the relegation final, doesn't mean they're going to win it. And all of a sudden, you can find yourself in a situation where, after everything that happened last year, Capitagle could be down intermediate. So, yeah, look, we need to see something from Capitagle, not just the result, but Stephen Craven and his management team. All they'll be thinking about is winning this game.
yeah, and I think it really would have gave Capitagle things to work on the last 2 weeks, and as I mentioned earlier, came to terms with their out of the championship. This is where they are, and this is the game they have to win. I think Capitagle. I think they'll win it by 6 in the end. But I think it will be tight. But I just expect them to maybe pull away in the last quarter. And the player I'd be looking to watch for here is Michael Garvey. I think he's so key to everything Capitagle do. He's nearly like a quarterback. When Capitagle are going well, he really dictates things around that half back line. And I think they'll really be looking for a big performance for him. How do you see this one there?
Well, Capitagle to win. I think if they show up, if they're able to recover from being in this position, they'll win the game. I'll go 4 points as the difference because I think Kilconieron are going to come and throw everything at them, and they'll have no fear of this. Of the four teams in the relegation, Kilconieron is the team that won't have any fear, and I think they'll be good enough to get a victory, whether it's this weekend or in 2 weeks' time. Player to watch. Do you know who I'm going to say now? Because I've been impressed with him this year. He's been impressed with many years, but not just what he does with the ball in hand, but off the ball is Jab Onion. He's done an awful lot of work for the Capitagle team in the three games this year, has created opportunities for other players, as well as probably been their top scorer from play over the course of the campaign. So I'm going to go with Jam Mannion to drive this Capitagle team to safety.
We were talking there, Darren, about some of the Senior Hurling Championship preliminary quarterfinals. But I think what's going to be the tightest over the weekend is probably the Senior B Hurling Championship quarterfinals.
100% agree with you. Even when I was doing the paper piece, I was over and back in both games. The two best teams in the competition are in the semi-finals. But again, it's an opportunity now with these two teams. And the other thing as well this year, as we're just after having a conversation about senior relegation, on paper, these four teams this weekend are fighting for their senior stars. That
Yeah.
was always the big thing that when Senior B came up a couple of years ago, and now with the new format coming in next year, the losers of these two games are going to be intermediate, Premier Intermediate, but they're going to be intermediate next year as well. So that raises the stakes in both games. They are two repeats of matches that took place last year, and I won't be at them. And I have a very good reason I won't be at them because my stepdaughter is playing a county final in Ballyleague. Other than that, I would be in Kenny Park on Saturday to see these games because they are going to be. I've seen been at both of the Senior B games this year, and they're two games that, if the four teams show up, they're going to be crackers.
Yeah, even it's a double header in Kenny Park, so it's Ballindureen, Portumna, Kenny Park Saturday 3 o'clock, as followed by Port Pierces and Lee Meadows Saturday at 4:45. And for anyone who can't make it, both games are live on Galway GATV. And as Darren mentioned there, Kilnadima Leitrim and Ascafrona straight through to the quarterfinals. Teen Aberdeen and Mulla, they're already Premier Intermediate teams, and their championship campaigns came to an end in round three of the group 2 weeks ago. If we look first at Ballindureen and Portumna, Ballindureen have been really impressive, but similar to last year, Portumna have found a way to get here, and we've seen how
Yeah,
close they
and
came last year.
I've seen Portumna in all three games this year, and I'm very disappointed with them against Fona. Probably more disappointed with them against Porty Pierces, even though there was a few shoots in that game. The game against Mulla was a cracking game. Both teams, both leaving it all on the line, went at each other. Like Mulla went down gallant in defeat. Portumna started to show signs that the team that nearly won this competition last year. But like Portumna have survived. And they are now in the same position as ever as all the four teams here. They are back in the championship, but they need their big names now to stand up for more than 10 minutes here and 10 minutes there. The last day, Adam Fogarty, Declan McLaughlin, Joe Canning all really stepped up, put in the performance. You had Martin Tui another day, Ronan O'Mara another day, Jamie Hogan another day, Owen Tracy did well the last day. Ivan Canning has actually been the one that's been catching my eye in goal, like the evergreen Ivan Canning. We're doing the simple things right, as well as some great saves. Like they got beat by 21 points by Hascafone, and Ivan pulled off three or four massive saves in that match. That's how poor they were in that day, but they're here, and there's no team that does knockout hurling quite like Portumna. On the other side of Ballinderreen, obviously they got promoted last year after winning the intermediate a couple of years ago. Not many would have been given them a chance, but they delivered 3 wins out of 3. They got themselves to a semi-final when they went down to Portumna in the semi-final last year. This year, they've again in the group stages, 2 wins out of 3. The game they lost was by just 1 point. And Ballinderreen, while they were beaten by Portumna last year, will have no hang-up about Portumna or their history. They beat them, I think, when they met in the senior championship a few years ago as well. Go back to Ballinderry, and I'm just looking at the team that played the last day, and there's so much strength and such a balanced team throughout, from Michael Kelly in goal all the way up to Roy Lan in attack. I think Roy scored 25 points in this year's championship. Luke Prendergast has scored a couple of goals. You have Sean Collins, Kevin Land, Shane Larkin in midfield. Between them, Robbie Meehan, haven't even mentioned him yet. Evan Morgan back at fullback as well. Keith Conley's put together a very, very good team, and they're going to take some beating in the Senior B Championship, whether that's this Saturday or not. Going back to Portumna briefly, I've mentioned a few names already, and I haven't mentioned Andrew Canning yet too. That when he delivers, and he was one of their better performers the first day against Hascafona. We certainly know from Portumna what they can do. Martin Dolphin, a massive loss from last year. I know Jack Canning is not there as well. But Portumna, for me, are going to have to deliver their best performance of the year if they're going to win this game. Because I think it's fair to say now Ballinderry deserve to go into this game as favourites. They mightn't thank me for saying that, but based on weeks in form over the last 2 or 3 years, even as close as Portumna came to win this competition last year, Ballinderry have been consistent throughout. They won an intermediate championship coming off as a third place team, and they brought that form into the Senior B championship. But again, they have to show up. Knockout hurling is different to group games, as we mentioned already. They have to show up. And we certainly know that we've seen the Joe Cannings, the Declan McLaughlins show up in big games before. Ballinderry's names, as I mentioned there already, have to show up. And if they do, they're in with a shout here.
Yeah, I've actually gone here for Ballindereen and I've gone for them by 4 points. Uh, as good as Portumna were last year, I don't think they've quite hit the levels this year. And in fairness, they did well to get over Mulla in what was a thriller between both of them, just edging them out in the end. And I think that'll give them some confidence. But I just don't think there's been enough consistency with Portumna, and if you compare that to Ballindereen, I think they've been really consistent and they've really established themselves as a competitor and even a team that potentially will fancy their chances of going all the way in this championship. And I've went for Ballindereen by 4, and I think Luke Prendergast has been so impressive in attack for them throughout the Senior B Hurling Championship. How do you see this one, Darren?
I will go for Ballinderry. As again, I was saying to you earlier on, I was over and back numerous times by 1 point
By 1 point.
because we know there's a performance in Portumna. We know there's a performance better than it's certainly what they showed in the first 2 games. Maybe we saw that against Mulla, maybe which cause it won't happen for them in Ballinderry win the game well. But I think Ballinderry have earned that right. They've earned that respect to go into this game as favourites. They and just throughout the team, like I'm looking there, Brendan Burke, Shane Cassidy, David O'Connor, Porrick Lafferty, like Ballinderry, that's a very impressive starting 15. And I know like they don't have as Niall Cohen this year, they don't have him, but they have a very impressive team. Player to watch, you've gone with Luke, so I'll go with Roy Lan. I think
Right,
Roy Lan
Lane.
is among the top four players um, in this championship so far. And if he can lead them on again, I think Roy Land could be the man to watch. But Ballinderry by a point.
Yeah, I think when you say it there and you say Luke Prendergast, Roy Lane have been so key to score and everything for Ballindereen throughout this championship. And if you look at the three then on the Portumna side, Ron O'Mara, Joe Canning and Declan McLaughlin, the defences are definitely going to be busy in this game with the threat that's in attack. But whichever defence comes out on top here, I think ultimately is just going to go on and win this game in the first Senior B quarter final. The second one, then Porrick Pierces and Liam Mellows met obviously last year in the Senior B Hurling Championship. Pierce is obviously in quite good form so far throughout the championship. I know the last day didn't go their way, but still, Haskell have been the form team and they were really competitive with Haskell throughout stages of that game. And then Lee Mellows, after a difficult defeat to Ballindereen, they've got things back on track and were just pipped by Kilnadine Leitrim in the last game in round 3 of the Senior Hurling B Championship then.
Yeah, look, Lee Mills have been disappointing. Let's start with them first, and I've great admiration for everyone there. And David Collins would always be one of the first ones to me every 2 weeks, and I'm checking team information before a match. But like this is a Division One league team. This is a team that were county champions in 2017. Some personnel have changed, but even when you look in paper, there are players there that you always ask yourself, why is this team playing Senior B? And why could this team more than likely be Premier Intermediate next year? They haven't scored a goal in the championship. They did put in the performance against Tina Abitanari, but this is the Tina Abitanari that are out. They were only 2 points short of Ballinderry in their defence. Kilnadine Leitrim just put all them in the end. They have players like Ty Carr and Adrian Morrissey. I know Adrian didn't play the last day, but in attack, John Kenny had a good game coming in there. You've Jack Hastings as well. You've Ed O'Reilly and Sean Morrissey, backbone of the defence, Ed Galway under 20. You kind of wonder with Lee Mellows, when are they going to show up in this championship? And if they show up on Saturday, then who knows? 3 games later, they could be county champions. And we certainly know that they're good. The great thing with the Senior B competition, Paul, as you've often said in the show numerous times, and I've often said in other things, it's been brilliant. And it hasn't been disappointing this year in some of the games we've gotten. It's just a pity they've nowhere to go afterwards, and hence we're making the change for next year. With Porrick Pierce's, look, at the end of the day, you have to admire what they've done in the championship so far. 3 goals against Mulla, bookended by 2 Emmett Ward penalties. Their best performance I've seen in years in Porrick Pierce's was against Portumna. They owned that game. If anything, against a Haskell-Fona, and I grew up in a period where a Haskell-Fona, Porrick Pierce's, and my own Ballinasloe were all playing intermediate, and they'd always try and stop each other as much as play hurling. And obviously, when you play a Haskell-Fona, you have to have a Cathal Mannion plan. But I think at times Porrick Pierce's probably went away from focusing on their own strengths to try and negate a Haskell-Fona. Granted, in the second half, when they went back to focusing more on hurling, Haskell-Fona pulled away. But you're talking about a player that's just unplayable at the moment. If Porrick Pierce's focus on their own strengths, then they'll be there or thereabouts. Oisin Flannery is as good a centre back in this competition. He did everything he could against Almania the last day. You can't blame a man for sticking with him. Jack Barrett, also with the half back line, has been fantastic this year for them. Killian Fay didn't happen from as much the last day, and I thought they took him off the freeze a bit prematurely myself. But he scored 318 in the championship so far. Jonah Donlan is really having an impact breaking into the team this year. Got 5 points from play against Portumna, can move from wing back to wing forward. And then you look at Harry Mitchell, has just slipped into goal so comfortably with Fergal Flannery gone away. Who else have I? Colin Raftery on these days. Good. Dean Riley probably never gets the credit that he deserves, but does an awful lot of work for the team as well. And well, Porrick Pierce's, before, and they did lose this game by 4 points last year at this stage in the quarterfinal against Lee Mellows. They're playing better hurling this year, even though Ronan Bellew is not there this year. They have a good team of players. They've put in a couple of young ones in there as well. And on form, if you discount the Haskell-Fona game, because, I think it's probably unfair maybe to judge them on that when they're trying to find their level, and they would have flirted with relegation in this a couple of years ago. And they're playing well, providing that there's no hang-up from the Haskell-Fona defeat. They can come out and put in a performance. Going back to Lee Mellows, they have a couple of injuries as well. I think Jack Ford is back available for them. But we have to see, no different to the conversation about Portumna, Lee Mellows have to show up. They put in good performances, but they haven't put in a performance you expect from a Lee Mellows. If that comes on Saturday, that could kickstart them on a run in this championship. But Porrick Pierce's will go into this game feeling that they are good enough to make the semi-final.
It seems like you're going Pierce's there, by how much?
Again, a toss and turn in this one, because I know what Lee Mellows can do if they get it right. But Porrick Pierce's by 2 is the official prediction.
And who would you be looking at for Pierce's?
I'm torn between 2 players, but I'm going to go with Jonah Donlan. Because I just think he's added something to the Porrick Pierce's team this year. He didn't score the last day, but he was superb against Portumna. He has energy there as well, and I think if he can have a good game here and do some damage to the scoreboard as well as out the middle third, he'll go a long way to helping Pierce's win this match.
Yeah, I'm just going to go against you on that one. I just think there's a performance in Lee Mellows, and I think it will come in the quarterfinal, particularly after probably a disappointing campaign, because I think Lee Mellows really want to get to a Senior B final, and it's something we've all expected since they've been at that level, but they haven't got there. So I think Mellows will edge it by 1, and I think Ed O'Reilly in the half-back line, who would have probably played underage with Joanna Donlan, I think he's going to be the player to watch for Lee Mellows this weekend. If we take a look then at the Intermediate Hurling Championship preliminary quarterfinals, Saturday, the only intermediate preliminary quarterfinal that takes place on Saturday is Mealich Aircourt and Clarinbridge's second team at 3:30. Darren, for me, I can only see one winner in this one, and I think it's Mealich Aircourt, just given they've secured Premier Intermediate status. It was an impressive victory for them over Ceylon, and Clarinbridge coming in having lost a few players to the seniors and then having conceded 9-20 the last day. I think it's going to be a difficult one for them.
The whole thing about Clarinbridge, they haven't been boring in this year's championship, have they? They conceded 6 against Ballygar, they scored 8 against Annadown, they conceded 9 against Kinvara, but you would fear that Mealich Aircourt are well capable of doing the same damage. You're right, Paul. Like they have, like Niall Armstrong's back with the seniors in particular. They got the big victory the second day, which normally would have ensured their survival. Obviously, things are different in 2026. But with Mealy Gaircourt consistently semi-finalists are better every year. I'm still stunned. We're talking back to the 90s, talking about Mealy Gaircourt winning an intermediate championship the last time, but there was strength throughout. You've John Fleming, you've Niall Fleming, you've Nathan Erner, um, James Downey taking centre back the last day as well. Tiernan Gorey, James Lyons on his day can shoot the lights out too as well. There's just too, excuse me, just too many options with Mealy Gaircourt, and yeah, I'd love to put up an argument for Clarinbridge, but I think winning the game, qualifying for the knockout stages, showing on their side of things that they are good enough to be intermediate, because obviously they'll go to the Junior A Dan Reeves Trophy next year. But it's hard to make an argument for anything but a Amelia Gaircourt victory.
Yeah. How much would you think they'll win this one by, Darren?
Oh, part of me wants to say five, but I think it'll be more than that. Um, I'm going to go with we're going to go with 8 points. I do hope Clarenbridge keep it to that or less, because you want to see teams at the knockout stage putting up a showing. But if Mealy Gaircourt are serious about trying to finally break through intermediate, they need to turn up and put in a ruthless effort.
Yeah, I really think the confidence is there with Milik Aircourt, and I don't think any team will want to play them in the quarter final. I was really impressed with them, the way they came through against Ceylon with Everton at stake, and I've gone here for Milik Aircourt by 10. I think Nathan Erner on the edge of the square is one I'd be looking at here again because he scored 1-8 the last day, and he's been a consistent performer and a consistent shooter for them throughout the championship. Who's your player to watch here, Darren?
I was looking at Nathan, but seeing you gone with Nathan, I'll go with John Fleming. I
Yeah.
think John, the leadership is important. He's played in defence, he's played in attack, his mobility around the middle third. And look, Karen Bridge, they'll have to have the plan for him. You know what I mean? And that's the first trying to unlock. Can they negate him having a massive influence? And if they can, you give them an outside shot. But I think this is a game now that John Fleming can take ownership of.
Yeah, and of course we'd like to see a couple of games closer as well this weekend, but it is just hard to see them in some of these games. If you look at the next preliminary quarter final, 1 o'clock in Gort, Kinvara, Kilbacon, and unfortunately we talk about Clarenbridge conceding 920. Kinvara were the team that scored 920. They're coming into this one in impressive form. They're coming into this one with Connor Whelan in impressive form, and I just can't see anything other than a Kinvara victory over Kilbacon this weekend.
Yeah, look, it's last year's runners up against the team that have dodged the relegation bullet for the last couple of years. And look, first thing with Kilbacon, they are like a model for how a club should be run, and the great work being done off the field of play. It just hasn't materialised on the field of play yet. And while our clubs probably won't look forward to playing them in Premier Junior next year, it mightn't be any harm for them to get into a competition that they have a chance of winning next year. They've made it to the knockout stages. They have absolutely nothing to lose. Stephen Lambert is a superb scorer, but he needs backup, and he hasn't really had that. But with Kinvara, like we haven't the games listened to the reports and the Kinvara matches, anything that's been in the paper. We haven't been talking about Connor Whelan as much, even though Connor Whelan has been the heartbeat of it all. The last day they just put the boot down. They got the job done. They're an unbeaten team in a preliminary quarter final. You don't get too many of them, but that's how tight themselves in Ballygar were when they met, and that was a draw match. Yeah, no different to the previous conversation. You'd hope for Kilbacety because it's their flagship team that they put in a performance. But again, you can't see where Dara Helibert has been absolutely brilliant this year. They've had an abundance of defensive options in likes of Larkin Heavey, Connor Burke the last day as well, Joshua Connor, another one there as well. Yeah, it's got to come down to this Kilbacon to keep the score down, put in a performance to be proud of before they make the drop to it'll be the third tier, which is the same tier they're playing at the moment. But I'd be baffled if we have anything but a comfortable Kinvara victory.
Yeah, I've gone for Kinvara by 12 here. I just think they're coming into this one, as we mentioned, in red hot form, and I think they'll want to build on it again heading into quarter final. How do you see this one, Darren?
I'm Kinvara by 8. And
Very.
I've probably just been soft tonight now, Paul. But Kildare by 8. I would hope that Kilbacon they will come out and put in an effort. And in fairness, they did against Spa the first day. They put in an effort for a while too. So you want to see that. This is a great chance for Kilbacon to show what they can do against a genuine championship contender. But no, I can't see any shock results. And player to watch, Dara Helibert. I've been impressed with him so far. I'd be curious to see can he continue that in the knockout stages.
Yeah, I've gone with Joshua O'Connor there. He's been really impressive, and we've seen him last year throughout the campaign as well. He's been really impressive player for Kinvara at the back over the last few years. If we look then, it's Rahu Newcastle coming up against Craughwell's second team in the preliminary quarter final, and that game takes place at 2:30 on Sunday in Gort. This is probably one of the closer ones. Rahu Newcastle, obviously, they've sealed their status into the Premier Intermediate Championship. But in fairness to Craughwell's second team, they've been an impressive team at this grade now for the last few years.
Yeah, and I was very impressed with them in their open day victory against Abbey Knockmoy. And Fionn Quirk was superb with some of the saves he pulled off in the closing stages of that match when Abbey Knockmoy got back into the game. Again, when you're dealing with a second team, you're always those reserves there, and especially when the first team is doing so well, can you hold on to your players? But Cromwell will come and give Rahun Newcastle a game. With Rahun Newcastle, like you always kind of wonder how they kind of fell off being the team we talked about. We're talking about championship contenders, even though they're still well capable of being championship contenders. Like they put Skip Adam up by Lochow last year's championship. They've won the great young players in Bertie Keane at the moment. He's just flying. He'd make most clubs in the county. Tony Oak is still knocking around. I do believe there as well with them. For Rahun Newcastle, a good showing in the group stages. They were caught. I can't remember. Did they catch Turloughmore? Or were they caught by Turloughmore in round one? But it was a draw.
They draw,
And
yeah.
they held their own against Baha. So there's no reason why to think they won't come out and get a job done, even if probably not by the margins that we were talking about in the previous two games. The thing with them at the end of the day is, look, they'll have the best player on the pitch. You would feel in Bertie Kane. Can they just make sure that Cropwell don't leave Cropwell in the mix, because Cropwell have done great work under Colin Rooney. They asked a few questions in the other games that they played there as well, but Rowan Newcastle getting into the business end of the championship, that's the way I feel it will work itself out.
It is the thing when you look at Craughwell, Kilbacon, Ceylon, Clarinbridge. It's a difficult one for them to have this game, knowing if they were to even say go on and win the championship, or progress further on in the championship, that they won't be a Premier Intermediate team regardless of what happens. It's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'll talk more to you about that when we get to the last game in a moment. But you have a situation where you have two teams still in the championship that could win the. Well, you have four teams. You're right, but when you take the second teams are going to be gone regardless. But you have two clubs in Kilbacony and Ceylon that could presumably win this competition and be relegated next year. I'm not too sure what will happen if that pans itself out. But look, for the second teams in regards to Clarenbridge and Cropwell, and they'll tell you this themselves, their number one priority is to be a feeder club. Now there's a big debate about whether they should have been excluded or not. And I've heard both sides of the coin, and I get the point in regards to the clubs holding an intermediate status. And no different to yourself, Paul, I come from a junior club as well, and I can see the pathway there that opens up for junior clubs. But likewise, when you want to keep hurlers involved, and when you are lucky to have a lot of good hurlers that want to play for your club, you want to give that incentive too to somebody that's not good enough to make the first team in the respective clubs, in this case, Clarenbridge and Cropwell, but you can add Turloughmore and Athenry to the mix as well. So this year, this year, they'll only be thinking about trying to win a competition. This year, they'll be all Cropwell and Clarenbridge will be thinking about is trying to make a quarter finals. Next year, when the new reality comes in, we'll see. And who knows, it could work swimmingly well for them. It mightn't, and who knows, it could be revisited in a couple of years' time. But for Cropwell, again, they always say they're a feeder club first and foremost, and then they want to compete. This Cropwell team have competed in this year's intermediate championship, and I expect them to compete again on Sunday.
Who are you going for in Rahun and Craughwell?
Oh, I'm going for Rahul Newcastle. Much closer than the other games we talked about. I'll say by 2 points, because I think Cromwell are capable of giving them a game. And I want to see who will step up for Rahul Newcastle outside of Bertie Keane. They've other good players like Carl Keane, Owen Curran, Keane Clarity. So, you know, uh, they can put in performance. And like we've seen before, like obviously they lost Eamon Brannigan this year, for example, on top of my head, but they've lots of good hurlers around Newcastle. And they're a team that we thought would make it to senior at some stage a few years ago. But I think they'll definitely make a quarter final in this year's intermediate championship, but narrowly by 2 points.
2 points. And who's your player to watch?
Oh, I have
Yeah.
Bertie. You know,
Yeah.
I can only say him so many times. you know, no, I just think look, he's a fantastic talent and really drives on that team, and I think he could drive on that team to special things over the next couple of years. Bertie Keane definitely.
Yeah, I'm going to actually go for Fionn Quirk, the Crofwell goalkeeper here. I think he's had an impressive campaign for Crofwell.
I agree completely.
Yeah, and it's probably just unfortunate that he has Stephen O'Halloran ahead of him in the club then when
Yeah,
it comes to the senior team. But he's been impressive between the sticks then for Cromwell. If we look at the final intermediate preliminary quarter final, Clymer Ceylon, they met previously on years gone by in the knockout stages in the intermediate hurling championship. This one 2:45 in Ballinasloe on Sunday. Obviously disappointing for Ceylon. They're going to be a junior club regardless of what happens. And for Clymer, they obviously just got by Abbey by the skin of their teeth, but a 1 point victory could do a lot for Crowell heading into, or for Clymer, shall I say, heading into this one.
yeah, and just before we go into them there first, just because I've touched on it, so I better say it now when we got to this game. Like you have to respect democracy. That's what the GA is built on, especially when we live in a world now that's not respecting democracy as much. But it just baffles me how this was ever agreed that the separation from Premier Intermediate and Premier Junior would come down to the top two out of three in the respective groups. Because we are talking about a Cylon team here that if they got a run going in this championship, it's not inconceivable that they could be winning the Intermediate Championship later in the year. Where for me, wouldn't it have made more sense to go with the eight quarterfinalists first, and if any of the second teams met it, then let the preliminary quarterfinals play off for the remaining spot. So I think it's very unfair in Cylon to be in this position because like they have been in quarterfinals, semi-finals regularly over the last couple of years, and just because they came out the wrong side of a very difficult group that included Mila Gaircourt and Scanham and Ballymalloch, they are in a situation here now where I don't know what happens if they were to win the intermediate championship, but as things stand, they're going to be playing Premier Junior hurling next year. Start. I just had to get off my chest, but I mean, start with them there first. Look, at the end of the day, they've been regulars in knockout hurling the last couple of years. They'll be disappointed not to suppose pull in the results that they needed against Mila Gaircourt and Scahanna Montpellier in the group stages, but they are coming in as the most threatening of the four third place teams you would feel because they have done it in big games in the past and they are capable of going on a run. But again, you're kind of looking at it as like where the scores are going to come from there. Can they stop conceding the scores? Can they have themselves in the mix? With Clymer, I suppose, have changed a bit since the team that won this competition back in 2022, and they were probably so unlucky to get relegated from Senior B in 2023. They lost to Carnmore the first day they come out with the other two results, though. They rode their luck against Abbey Knockboy until the final whistle getting over the line, but they turned it on in the closing moments. Jack O'Mara absolutely brilliant in that game. He had a great block down as well in an Abbey Knockboy attack at the end. Clymer haven't shown the form yet that they did 3 years ago, but they're no different to Ceylon. They are in this position here now. This is, I wouldn't go overstated and say 50-50 as such, but this is probably the closest game of the weekend. And regarding the form team can get the job done here. Clymer have the know-how. They know how to win this competition. They have bounced back from an opening day defeat to get themselves here as a second place team. They will go in as marginal favourites. Ceylon need a lot of players to step up. They need to shake off now their position, say, right, we are where we are. Let's go and have a crack at this competition,
Yeah.
and we'll worry about next year. But again, I'm probably very lucky this week because it's the game I got in the Duggan Park, so I'm looking forward to it. And it should be a cracker. It's a great way to finish off the intermediate weekend.
Yeah, no, it really hasn't. They've had some even great battles previously. I know they went to extra time a couple of years ago in a knockout game, and it's always been close when these two sides have met. For me here, I am going to go for Climber though. I just think it will be hard for Ceylon to lift things, but no doubt they will, and they'll fancy having a rattle off Climber. But I just think Climber by three here, and the player I've gone to watch here is Owen McAvoy. I think over the last 2 years he's became Climber's main shooter in attack, and I think he'll have another big performance at the weekend. You you're going Climber, Darren?
Yeah, I'm just trying to decide by how much because I did say it'd be the closest one, but I only went by two the last game, so I can't go above that. Um, I'll go with Climber by two because I just think overall, you mentioned McAvoy there as well, and of course Kevin Haney too, which has been consistent and well able to field the ball. Sean O'Grady's puckouts going to be so important. He got a penalty for them the last day too that proved very very important. But Ceylon have loads of players like as again. You're talking about a Ceylon team that if you were to put right down the 16 teams at the start, or even the 12 teams, first teams, you would put them in the top 18. So again, I just feel that they should be able to go play for a spot in Premier Intermediate. But look, that's the way it went, and they have to now get on with it. I've no doubt they'll be back in Premier Intermediate quick enough if they do go down junior next year. For Climber, who am I picking for Climber? I've been impressed with Ian Fahy in defence this year. He's been consistent, so I might just go for him. I think he'd have a big say in the matter, but I think it's about probably this is a game in particular where some of the players that we haven't mentioned so far could have the biggest say in who wins this match.
Yeah, just to mention as well, there's Junior A quarterfinals taking place this weekend. So the fixtures are as follows: Loughrea and Capitagle. They're playing in the Junior A quarterfinal, and that's followed then. We have Kiltormer and Ballinasloe at half three. No doubt you'd be interested in that one, Darren.
I hope you're asking for predictions there now.
And Sarsfields and Thomas's and Oranmore Mary and Lee Mellows. The Junior A Championship would usually be the winners of this would go on to intermediate, but they still are going to be a Premier Junior club, obviously here. But for Kiltormer and Ballinasloe, the factor in this stage, both of those clubs really hope that they can go on and represent Galway at Connacht level this year.
Yeah, and look, Paul, at the end of the day, and I'm not saying this being a Ballinasloe person, but that's the game that I picked out with the four quarterfinals because they're two first teams. And Kiltormer, the tradition they have, like I remember Tony Fury scoring a goal in Croke Park for Kiltormer. He lived up the road from me in Ballinasloe back in the day, but he's a Kiltormer man. And like they were All Ireland champions that year. Our own club have had a good run in recent seasons. They've moved up the divisions. They've won two Junior One championships, and of course the Junior One that won't be happening after this year for obvious reasons with the new format. Um, that's like I gave my good reasons earlier on why I won't be at Galway games on Saturday, but obviously I'd be very interested in that game for my own club to see it. But likewise, I want to see Kiltormer get themselves back up the road. That's not going to happen this year with the new format change as well. But that'll be a cracking game because there's a rivalry there over the years. Kiltormer is just outside a few miles outside Ballinasloe. But again, for all these Junior A clubs, it's competitive competition. It'll be interesting to see how it pans out next year. But it's the second teams are pretty much just lumped together in their own competition. There's no reason to suggest it won't end up being as competitive as always. But we'll see how that pans out over time. But they are four great games and great for the clubs involved to have second teams in there. But yeah, look, even if I wasn't from where I'm from, I'd be looking to see how the winners of Kiltormer Ballinasloe will get on over the rest of it.
Yeah, one of the standout games there in the Junior Hurling Championship for sure over the weekend. That's all we do have time for on today's show. A huge amount of action to look forward to this weekend, and the picture obviously will become a lot clearer in all the various championships over the weekend. But Darren Kelly, thanks a million for your time.
Pleasure mine, Paul. Thanks a million.